June 6th, 1944. For over a year, the magnificent Operation Overlord had been in planning. Troops had been training for 2 years to set foot on European soil to drive the Germans back. The day of reckoning was at hand, and the beaches of Normandy were chosen as the battlefield for the first clash. At Omaha Beach, the landing craft were about to hit the feared Atlantic Wall, where the Germans had sounded the alarm at the sight of thousands of ships. Many of the first troops who hit the beach, that had so intensely trained for 2 years, would meet their end in seconds. The onslaught was incredible. The Germans in their high bunkers often did not even have to aim, but could unload on clusters of troops scattered across the beach. Many were sitting ducks, and the first wave that hit the beach lost men at a staggering rate. Confusion spread amongst the troops, as squads could not link up, and no progress was made, since so many were pinned down by machine gun and artillery fire. In mere minutes, the beach had become the site of horrors, with piles of bodies stacked on top of each other. Many men still alive, missing a limb and screaming in agony. Some were pushed back towards the water, and virtually the entire first wave would be eradicated. But as the French sand was being drenched in American blood, the second wave of troops arrived, after which another wave would land until they could push the enemy back. And so as the beaches grew quiet for a mere moment, the slaughter started all over again. Despite there now being hundreds and hundreds more American troops with the second wave, the hell they set upon was still as gruesome as before. Many desperately tried to take cover behind the anti-tank obstacles, only ever being able to move a few feet every other minute. Soldiers were screaming, crying, praying, and most of all hoping they would not get shot. If they would be able to get closer to the shingle, they would be out of the machine gun's point of view, granting them a bit of a breather. And despite many being mowed down again, the new waves that were coming in did aid the Americans gaining ground. The beach was long, littered with bodies and soaked with red blood. But the Germans were starting to take losses as well. The tide was slowly turning. Many of the troops no longer were near the water, and those desperate or brave sprinted towards the grass, its softness feeling like a welcoming pillow. Some were trying to take potshots at the German machine gun nests in the bunkers and on top of the hill. But from this position, there was not a whole lot they could do, and so the fighting would have to revert back to trench warfare and man-to-man. The first of the US troops that headed over the hill were greeted with German gunfire, but they just kept coming, wavering the German spirit and making some of them flee towards the rear. Now it was time for the Americans to have their enemy pay in blood, and they did, as they could feel the weight of the battle being shifted. Once they would conquer the first trench line, they could at least gain a proper foothold and deal with the remaining enemy troops further down the trenches and into the fields. Most were just glad that they did not have to deal with that god-awful machine gun fire and artillery on the beach. And as the Americans silenced mortar positions and machine gun nests, the sound of enemy resistance quieted down on the beach, granting more movement freedom for many of the troops. Now they would spread out, head from bunker to bunker and trench to trench to root out the German soldiers or capture the ones who surrendered. From here on out, they would link up with the other beaches and nearby towns, and their campaign into France to liberate Europe would begin. It would be a gigantic and gruesome task that would still last for almost a year.